I thought it would be interesting to get a quick look at the relationship in our little model, the books written by authors. So we'll do a bit of work with that to get a taste of it before we dig into relationships more deeply later in the course. I've modified the program file with two new methods, add author with book and get authors with books. So we'll add a new author with their books as opposed to adding books to some of the existing authors. The first three lines of code here have nothing to do with EF Core. I'm simply working with the author and book classes. I've created yet another author called Julie Lerman, and we'll definitely deal with this duplication later. Then I added two of the Entity Framework books I wrote oh so long ago to this author's books property. Next is some familiar code. I'm instantiating the pub context again, and then adding this author. Notice that I'm not telling the context anything about the books. I'm just passing in the author object that has the books already attached. Then I call Save Changes again. EF Core will take care of inserting the new author and the new books and make sure that in the database they're connected by way of the author's ID that the database will generate. So EF Core comprehends the relationship between them and knows how to relay that to the database. The second new method gives you a glimpse of retrieving related data. Instead of just asking for the list of authors, I'm using this method called include, which is a method of dbset. In order to use the include method, you will need a using statement for Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, then passing into it the books property of the author's class. In case this syntax with the equal sign and greater than sign are new to you, the full expression with the A, that symbol, and then A.books is referred to as a lambda expression, and you'll be seeing plenty of these throughout this course. In the case of the include method, it's saying for each of the authors that you find, also bring back their books. So the resulting authors list will have the books attached to each of the authors. I then iterate through each author that came back in the list, write out their name, and then iterate through any books that are attached to that author and write out their titles. When I run the app, you can see that the first two authors don't have any books, which is correct. We didn't add any to those authors. But the third does have the two books listed under it. Checking the database, there are all three authors now. Notice that the ID for the new one is 3. When I open the books table, the two books are listed, and not only did they get their own primary key values from the database, but notice that the author ID is 3 for both of them. I mentioned earlier that EF Core has a convention for any property named ID, and it assumes that that's the database primary key. There's another convention that identifies properties that should be keys, and that's a property that has the name of the type plus ID. So book ID followed that convention, and EF Core knew that it should be the key for the book type. Therefore, it let the database generate those keys just like it did for the authors. And once it created the new author, then EF Core took the newly generated ID, 3, and inserted the books into the database along with that author ID.